The time has come for the Virizion PvP IV deep dive, basically going over the best PvP IVs and stat checks for Virizion in Ultra League PvP. Are the Raid IVs a-okay? Should you trade to try to improve your IVs? Basically covering all that in this video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about a lot of the true stats of a Pokemon and how they relate in PvP. So if you're not too familiar with these concepts, I highly recommend checking out my PvP IVs simplified video, link up above and in the description, basically to get your feet wet before you dive off into the deep end here. Also, all the numbers I'm going to be talking about in this video, along with PvP IV tables that make this all nice and simple, will be in my article on GamePress, linked in the description as well, the Virizion PvP IV deep dive, if you want to have a nice text-based way to reference all this material. And without further ado, let's get into Virizion here. So to start out, here are some of Virizion's better raid catch IVs, so you don't have to trade to get these IVs. And I'd say overall Virizion, if you do have some of the better IVs on this specific table here, I don't think you really do need to trade to try to improve Virizion, or at least the benefit you get from trading isn't that high compared to how it can be for other species. The defense on this list is cut at 176.73, which is the bare minimum to get an Escavalier defense breakpoint, which improves your ability to manage it in the 0-1 shield scenario. So higher defense on this list will have more consistency for that specific matchup. 160 HP is the other cut on this list, which covers a variety of matchups, such as the Drapion 1-2 shield scenario, the Shadow Machamp 1-1 shield scenario, the Venusaur 1-0 shield scenario, the Empoleon 1-2 shield scenario, and many other matchups on top of it. So I think just having 160 HP or higher is probably just a good idea for Virizion. If you happen to have a Virizion built already for the Ultra League and it has like 159 HP, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think you should go out and build a second whole Virizion, but it's just good to know ahead of time that 160 is a significant number to look out for. Of course, if you do have 162 HP, then that does improve your ability to manage a lot of charm users in the 1-0 shield scenario, and can even potentiate you overcoming wall rain in the 2-2 shield scenario. So 162 HP does have its benefits. So overall, the rank 1 is looking pretty spicy. Then when it comes to the attack weight, I'd say the attack weight is kind of what saves Raid Virizion more than anything, because there's a lot of breakpoints it gets up here, and a lot of CMP potential it can get as well. For example, at 147.01, you can get an Aurorus breakpoint. I don't know how much Aurorus we're going to see in the Ultra League, but according to PvPoke, it's looking really good. So it could be like sort of like a Ultra League Bastiodon kind of Pokemon, hard walling flying type Pokemon, but even scarier because it's fast and it can boost its own attack with the Meteor Beam. So that's good to know. 147.37 attack can get a Deoxys Defense Board breakpoint, which allows you to overcome it in the 2-2 shield scenario. So you will see that the rank 1 here of Raid Catch IVs doesn't have quite that high of attack, but some Deoxys Defense Form might have a slight like attack weight going on for them, which would lower their defense. So the rank 1 could still technically catch that matchup. And then 147.4 or higher attack can get charge move priority on Poliwrath, which can enable the 1-2 shield scenario, and then can also enable you taking one less Ice Punch in general, which is also pretty useful to know, pretty useful to have. And if you have a higher than 146 attack weight, then Virizion, like opposing Virizion's, even trade-weighted ones, can't really avoid the mirror attack breakpoint, so it kind of gives you a little bit more edge in the mirror in a sense as well. But most Virizion will probably have a higher attack weight, so you know what to say about that. But yeah, I'd say overall these IVs are pretty good. And then if you trade, like if you do a bunch of raids and you don't get these IVs, then you can trade and you have a pretty good opportunity to get similar IVs from trading. Then here we have a list of 61 different IV spreads that are effectively the same kind of weight as the raid weighted ones. So if you do a bunch of raids with the Virizion trying to get it and you don't get one of the better IV spreads here, well, there's 61 different options starting at the good friend floor that you could trade for to get a similar stat weight. Of course, generally when you're trading Pokemon, you don't want to try to get like an attack weight, you want to try to get an even higher bulk weight, and there are some advantages to having a higher bulk weight on the Virizion. So of course there is trading Virizion to try to get a bigger bulk weight, you know, push that attack stat even lower so you can get even more bulk, and there are some advantages to having that higher bulk, but they don't seem to be like that big in my opinion. Like obviously you've got like maximum bulk, which is almost impossible to get, you could be trading forever, and there are some interesting things you can do at that level, but when I boiled it down, there was only like 5 IV spreads that can have that level of bulk, which is completely unreasonable to try to promote for people to build. You're basically building like the rank 1 good friend trade at that point, right? So kind of wild. But if you are looking to pump up your bulk, I'd say the first place you want to look is going to be your HP stat. Having at least a 162 HP stat does enable you to overcome those charm matchups a little bit better and can help in other fringe situations as well. So HP, very good starting point. And then the higher defense you have over the 167.73 gives you that much more consistency against S Cavaliers, and then also gives your HP a little bit more weight because you can lower charge move breakpoints, right? And that can be pretty useful. Higher defense, one little ticket, one little mark to keep in mind would be having at least 178.86 defense. That can get you defense breakpoint against both Wall Rain and Shadow Wall Rain, which can enable the 2-2 and the 1-1 respectively. What's interesting about those matchups though is that if you deal enough damage to them, you can still overcome those matchups anyways. So if there's something like lesser than the rank 1, for instance, and you've got a high attack stat, so your leaf blades do that much more damage, there is a relatively good probability of you still overcoming those fights, but obviously taking less damage from the powdered snows is always a good goal to have, right? But I don't think the benefits are exactly there on the defense side. I think getting the bigger HP can be pretty nice though. And if you are looking at trade IV spreads, I would also keep in mind having at least a 144.42 attack stat. This can get a breakpoint on Gyarados for the 0-1 shield scenario, and a breakpoint on Drapion, which can make some of the shield disadvantage scenarios more consistent, such as the 0-1 or the 1-2 shield scenario, so it can be pretty nice. And then you also can get charge move priority on Auroras, which is kind of goofy, right? So having at least a little bit of attack can be pretty useful. And of course, in the article on Game Press, which is linked in the description, I do have a PvP IV table showcasing the 148 different IV spreads that have at least 144.42 attack, at least 178.86 defense, and at least 162 HP. There's 148 different options. So as you can imagine, the probability of trading into one of these options is pretty high. But what are the real chances here? Well, if you want to trade to get one of these bulk spreads and you're trading with a good friend, that's 148 different IV spreads here, as you can tell, right? And to have a 50% to 75% probability, it would take about 15 to 31 trades. Now, if you pumped it up to Great Friend, that would limit the options to 113, but there are less bad IVs that you could get, or undesirable IVs you could get as well. And as a result, it has basically the same rate of 16 to 33 different trades. And then when we go up to Ultra Friend, that's only 84 IV spreads, but once again, the potential other IV spreads that we get also lowers dramatically too, once again giving it a similar rate of 18 to 36 trades for a 50% to 75% probability. And given how much cheaper Stardust-wise it is to go for Ultra Friend trades, I think if you are trying to trade to improve your Virizions, like, don't let me stop you from doing good and great friend trades to have that lower floor in case you're looking for a very high bulk weighted one. But Ultra Friend seems to be a very cost-effective method. When it comes to Best Friend though, well, then things kind of plummet. And for a 50% probability, you're going to have to do 38 trades. If you really want to have it with best friends, you're probably going to be trading for a couple months, potentially. I mean, it's all probability, right? So you could get it right away, or you could like not get it for a year. So just be careful with that. And then if you add in the other trade IVs to the mix, the ones that look like the raid IV ones, so you did like, I don't know, 10 Virizion trades, and you want to do like 10 trades for Virizion or something because you didn't get a good IV spread from the raids, if you combine the two lists, right? Well, then for both good, great, and ultra friend, it would take about 11 to 22 trades for a 50% to 75% probability, which is extremely good. And then with best friend trades, it actually bumps up quite a bit to a 15 trades to 30 trades for a 50% to 75% probability. So I'd say just sticking with ultra friend and best friend trades could be the most cost-effective way to go when it comes to trying to improve your Virizion IVs. And compared to most other species, Virizion does seem to be very forgiving when it comes to how many trades it can take to possibly get one of those better IV spreads. So that's all I gotta say about Virizion right now. If you got any questions on this content, of course, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this kind of content and you want to see more like it, well, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. SwagTips. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these Patreon supporters. If you want to support Swagman on Patreon, link in the description. Which Pokemon am I going to do a PvP IV deep dive on next? That is the question.